Yeah. Hello, everybody. We're doing our all or nothing final two episodes reaction. I'm CK. I'm here with George and Karen. Obviously, we're a bit late, and we apologize for that. But how are you two doing?
Good, bro. Not too bad. Ready to discuss this because it's pretty cool. I think this last couple episodes were interesting. They confirmed some things for me.
And Karen.
Yeah, all good, buddy. Let's just get into this.
Well, yeah. Obviously, we watched the six episodes, and it got up to the point just before Palace, just before we went on that three-loss run. Obviously, we're going to Palace, and he's telling the players, you need to have an identity. You need to be together. You need to stick together. What can I do to help you guys stick together in the good times and the bad times? Obviously, no one responded. As always, they don't respond to those questions. But the Palace segment, how did you feel about that? And how did you feel the preparations were? Obviously, the in-game, like halftime was there, but how did you feel the preparations were, like the identity stuff going into Palace?
I mean,
George?
like it's difficult for me because I feel as though a lot of what was being said wasn't being done, and then when you look at it, I don't think that this team is got enough about them to stick to their plan. And ultimately, when you look at not even just Palace, but also Brighton, and you look at Southampton in that three-game run. A lot of the halftime team talks, the preparation talks were very, very similar in terms of what they needed to do, and they weren't getting it done. And I think there was just far too many people willing to accept the game state in terms of their instructions. I think it was really quite clear. He kept saying we need energy, we need to meet them. We need to flip a switch. We need to change a gear ultimately in these games. And you need to make sure that you're running with them. And I don't think that we saw a response in any of them. So it was just a case of, you know, having to understand, I think, how young this team was. I remember messaging you in the group, Chris, and like one of the starkest things I've realized is how young they were. I know we kept talking about the age, but realistically, when somebody isn't available to talk, and in tough moments, it was just consistent. It was the same subjects. It was Ramsdale. It was Granit Xhaka.
Cedric,
It was
Xhaka,
Cedric,
Lacazette.
even, which, by the way, surprised me. I didn't think, like, I knew Cedric as old head, but I didn't think he would talk as much as he did. And it makes sense why he's in the squad, because I think ultimately for me, we just don't have enough characters right now that are ready, that believe their superstar status. I think we have a lot of superstars, but they don't believe that they're superstars, i.e., Saka, Smith Rowe. Look, Martin Odegaard, I'm going to say it. People are going to love my agenda. He didn't talk once, like in the entire tough period in all 8 episodes. And I remember telling Chris, and you were like, well, let's wait to see kind of in the end if he does speak up. And if there's a section, there's not even a section beyond the section. There's not even an instance where he speaks up. Like I, I encourage everybody, despite the supposed bias, is there at any moment that you felt that he looked up, not even spoke, looked up, was confident? If you notice, I was very specifically looking for that because I didn't see it. And so for me, when I see those things, I'm not happy because look who left, by the way. Partey, who I don't think really does that, but Kieran, he talks. He absolutely talks in there. And you could see it. But having him leave the dressing room, for me, it then became a case of having players that had just arrived become the leaders, i.e., Ramsdale and Ben White, were two people that I felt, okay, they're leaders already, but that shouldn't be the case. When you first come into a club, you shouldn't have to do it. And so for me, look, it confirms some things that I already knew. It doesn't help some of the away day allegations, but I think ultimately, if I'm going to be fair, look, Bakayo didn't do it. Emil didn't do it. But again, I'm less harsh on those guys because they produced on the pitch, but ultimately they're young. Like I can't hammer a 20-year-old for not being consistently ready to meet an adversity challenge. And for me, it just kind of spoke and re-emphasized that these boys, at least what helped me was Mikel knew the problems. I think one of the big things, and I think we always knew here on this channel, we're very pro Mikel, but I think one thing that must do is destroy this stupid myth that he told people to sit back and sit down, because every single team talk, every single one was about energy, was about meeting your man face to face, however many variations you want to say off that Man City, because his team talks were the exact same thing, beyond using different analogies. One time it's a light bulb, other times it's other things. But like the idea is there's always energy pressing from the front foot. And I just think it was nice to see. It destroyed some of those narratives. And ultimately, this team is freaking young.
Yeah, I mean, for in terms of Crystal Palace specifically, the main thing for me was like after coming back from that international break, he sat them all down and tried to gel them all and bring them all together, and it just felt like people either weren't ready or didn't really feel up to, like they didn't feel back. I felt like they were that whole meeting, that energy in that room felt weird. I don't know if that came across to any of you two, but the energy in that room just wasn't like in sync. Didn't feel in very focused. So I think there was. I think we all said it on the channel at the time. The break came at literally the worst possible time for us. Like we were after Villa, we were sort of rolling. We were getting back from that Liverpool loss and that little blip, and we were rolling in that time. And to have that break come there, and obviously Katie's injury when it happened when it did. During the Palace game, I think what was so key to me was at 45 minutes, and this is a thing that will happen with all the losses that come up, is at 45 minutes, forget it, it's done. All of it was about being in the moment, forgetting what has happened, be in the moment, know what you're coming up against, win your duels, win your in your individual battles, and press with intensity and play with freedom. Don't just fall back and don't not be aggressive. The main thing for me was the ability to be consistent throughout all the team talks, is the intensity, the ability to win your duels, etc., etc. What I've already said. So I think Palace specifically, the whole thing was the all of these things, and this would be a common thing throughout these two episodes, is before he's really trying to impose on them, look, we've got to do this. This is our time. You can do this. And then half time he's trying to fix it, and he's poking against the same things, the same problems. And I think we mentioned a couple of them on the channel as well. So I think that's the main thing. I think the consistency in how we dropped in the first half in a lot of these performances, and specifically Palace.
Oh yeah, and then obviously the Palace game. But for me, like the main thing around that time, Palace Southampton, was we had a lot of players. Like they kept going back to the doctor's room. Like there was so many players in the physio room, like consistently. Ramsdale was there a lot. Tierney was there the whole time. Party was there a lot. White was there a lot. Holding was there a lot. Like I even said to you guys, wow, going into this Newcastle or the end of the season, Gabriel was our only fit centre back. Everyone else, like even Tommy, who could play centre back, was a bit injured. So it was like very tough on us. Obviously, we did lose those 3 games, and yes, at halftime he kept telling them, you have to forget about the first. Like the most vocal person probably I think in that period was Xhaka, who I think this series just summed up who's the real captain of the changing room. Obviously, Lacazette got the armband just because he's the oldest guy, but I think that he's the captain of the team. And yeah, after that, on the overall episode, what did you make of firstly, actually, let me ask you about something specific. Actually, Lacazette and Cedric fighting. Like, what did you make of them two fighting in that period? Because obviously they didn't really
Lack
talk
is a
much.
coward in that instance.
Yeah,
He's a coward in that instance. I don't know why he's frustrated and he kicks out at a young kid, and then he gets in Cedric's face for no reason, and then grabs his face. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. He's taking out his own frustrations out on other people, and you're meant to be the captain. That's cowardly behavior. So
yeah,
for
he was
me,
saying stuff like, "Don't talk to me
that
like that."
yeah, that to me, I mean, I'm glad he sorted it out straight away. But for me, that whole thing was sort of like, okay, it is what it is, man. I'm happy for your service. Thank you for everything, but it's time to go, man. You
Look,
need to
I
be done.
think ultimately I hate that behavior. I'll be honest. But you know what, guys, this is the type of experience that's led this team for far too long in the worst ways possible. Like, it's somebody that when things don't go their way, they lash out and then they don't accept responsibility. Like, in what world is it that you're pissed that a youngster stole it off of you, and then you're grabbing somebody, your own teammate, by the throat? Like, guys, it's so petty, and you're doing that because Cedric's smaller than you, and that's what you can do. But I mean, ultimately, I guarantee you, he's not doing that to Shaka. Guaranteeing you, he's not doing it to Ben White. He's
Well,
not doing
when
it to
Xhaka grabbed
Gabriel.
him, he stopped. He's like slowed down and he stopped grabbing people.
Well, but that's just a fake hard man thing, and I hate that so much. So for me, I'm just happy that we ended up to move on. But it is what it is, and I think like between that instance, it was just ridiculous. And I'm proud of Cedric. To be fair, somebody that I've criticized very much, Cedric came across very well and cross in this documentary. Not just the fight, but previously when he's talking with Arteta about how he sees the game. You can actually understand shouts that say that he wants to be a manager.
Well, yeah,
Can we talk about Eddie though? Because
yeah, we
Eddie,
can.
this
But
whole
firstly, I wanted to talk about El Neni because obviously during it, George was like to me, "I'm so frustrated that El Neni looks good in this," and I asked him why does that make you frustrated? But yeah, El Neni
What did I
looked good.
say? Do you remember
El,
what I said back?
nah, I'm not gonna say it. El Neni.
Why? Why? No, you can't just say that. Why?
Say
Why?
it.
What
What
did I
did you say about
say?
George?
No, I'm tired that you've basically not got enough people with that same mindset.
Yeah, but
That's
the thing is,
actually
I
what I
think that
said. And
that mindset was like Arteta what I noticed was Arteta was indirecting the Lokongas and the Tavareses of the world by saying, El Neni, man, what a great mindset. You don't play all this time. You come in, you enjoy yourself, and you're back happy. You're happy the whole time. You keep trying. You keep trying. Same thing he said about Eddie. Same thing he said about Holding, who you don't like. But he said it about Holding as well. That despite having all this time out, you still performed when you needed. And obviously, Eddie, as Karen wanted to speak about, Eddie, they had that moment with Lokonga telling him that why are you so sad that you're not playing? We're all not. You're not the only one that's not playing. I've been here for years, and I'm not playing. But you shouldn't let you not playing affect the way you perform. But yeah, what did you make of how El Neni and Ketcher after, but El Neni came across in these two episodes?
I mean, for me, if you're talking about Neni, he's always had that aura about him. You know that video I think I posted 50 times about him, his relationship that he wants with the fans, and how he wants people to support him, and how he thinks that the relationship between fans is. And ever since that video came out, and you're just thinking, this guy's a professional. He's not willing to back down. He knows where he's earned his respect, and he knows who he is. And he came across as a man in this. He came across as one of the only men from the old regime in this documentary. And you look around and you look at the guys, like extremely talented guys that I'm happy and proud that have played for this club, like Alba, like Laka, like a Mesut Ozil in the past, or like someone like that. And you look at the attitudes they have, like these guys were doing hippie crack and all this crap. Like the attitude that El Neni came across with, that's the kind of player I want on my club. That's the kind of player that you want, making sure that you have everything. He will give everything for you at any time. He'll step up. So I reckon if you're talking about El Neni, it's someone that I respect. I don't think that he's going to be a solution long term, and that's nothing against him as a person. But I think as a player, he's not got the facilities to perform at that top level. But as a man, I've got nothing bad to say against him.
I mean, I think look, ultimately, here I'll address it because Rob, I often call him balding. In fact, if you guys could actually see it, I kept saying that so often. Look, Rob is a nice guy, but you know what? I'm going to point to the Spurs moment, and look, that pissed me off quite a bit, guys. I'm not going to lie. Like when you come back inside, he's like, I shouldn't be in a position to be 1v1. But at the same moment, like, sure, but you're in that moment. And guess what? When Granit Xhaka was in that moment with Pablo Mari, he's sitting there offering a solution. He doesn't use it as a justification for his bad behavior. That's what annoys me quite a bit, where, look, you're probably right. You shouldn't be 1v1. And I didn't want you to be 1v1. But now that you're there, don't do something stupid to release yourself of responsibility. Don't do something where you take yourself out of the play knowing you're there. It was like when Mustafi used to go to ground. Like, look, there were instances where he shouldn't be put in that position, but he went to ground because he was selfish and he wanted to absolve himself of responsibility. Rob throwing his shoulder at the moment and what he did with Son was stupid. Like it was. You're in that 1v1 situation.
It wasn't,
You're
but
right.
the thing
You
is, it
shouldn't
wasn't
be there,
just
but
one incident though.
It wasn't.
If you remember that
He
game,
was
it wasn't just.
front-footed.
It was like
No,
he was the
He
whole
made 4
game.
tackles in 30
Yeah.
minutes and then got a red card. Like 4 fouls, sorry, in 30
Yeah.
minutes and got a red card. But like overall, he was painted as like the most happy guy in the team, and then he goes and blames the team for his mistakes. And obviously, you are right that he shouldn't have been 1v1, and he's right in that he shouldn't have been 1v1 4 times in a row versus Son, but he shouldn't have made 4 fouls in a row versus Son. Like that's his issue. But obviously, he killed our chances that game. He honestly killed our chances to win because what they got a pen and then the red card, 1-0 up, and the game was pretty much done from the first half. And then after that, the Eddie thing happened. Eddie's drill 1v1 with Arteta. Eddie with
Do you know what I loved about that? I don't know if
Stevenberg.
people will pick up on this. So this is just a little bit of coaching insight. What he was doing, by the way, it translates because you can see in preseason, Eddie has this superpower when he drops deep in the left half space to turn and run. That's the product of coaching, by the way, guys. When you're talking about that drill about 1-2 touch, then explode, that's what gives him the ability to do what you see in preseason, what you see to do him in the last couple of games. That drop into the left half space is exactly what they were coaching. And if you noticed, he said, look at the switch wide immediately. Boom. Did anybody pick up on that? That's what Mikel's instruction was to Eddie. Once that you take those first 2 touches to get out of feet, look up immediately to switch wide. And what is that? Ultimately, we are trying to get the ball as quick as we can wide 1v1 to create this numerical superiority, which just means let's get it wide so that you can basically have your better players on the ball against mismatches. That's what it is. And what I really liked, at least in that little part, was it showed Eddie, who just came across very well. Like if you're looking at the youngsters, Eddie is clearly the leader. He's
Very
that leader.
different.
He's that leader in the friend group. You know, I'm gonna be a little bit funny, but you know when you go out with your boys and stuff, and like you see a girl that you're like, oh yeah, he's cute. He strikes me as kind of like the leader of the group. Hey boy, I already scouted him first, so press off. You know, like Eddie is that guy. You know, he is somebody that for me is a very big leader. You know, he is somebody that
Yeah.
I think for me, he just seems like the next one up. Like if you're looking at your Shaka, your Ben White, your Ramsdale, who are kind of leading in that mid-age group, you know, Eddie is the leader of the youngsters. Very, very clear. And I think for many of us, we saw that in a lot of interviews. But you know, I'll be honest, guys, this is going to be a little bit of criticism for Mikel. Like if you're seeing that in training, I'm even more upset that he isn't introduced earlier. Like if he's following all, and no offense, like the apology in interviews isn't enough for me. And I'm really glad they put in the Beautiful Game podcast. I'm really glad that they put that moment in because it does show that it wasn't just a PR piece from Mikel. Like this was a mistake on Mikel. And by the way, this is from a guy who has been doing the fundamentals long before. You look at the Sambi interaction, and you know, you look at how Sambi was in the dumps. Particularly, it's like he's not playing. Well, shut the fuck up. You think you're the only one that's not playing?
Yeah, I
Come
think
on.
they done well to spin it in a positive light on Eddie because it was
Yes.
like the next one up mentality that you spoke about. Like the Warriors speak about it all the time. That we're all a team, and there's obviously stars. There's obviously main players who are gonna get their chance. But once you do get your chance, don't let it go by. Like take the chance because you've seen that it may be the only one you get, and then put yourself in a good place. Like for example, Eddie wasn't playing for so long until he got like his first 2 starts in a row, Southampton and then Chelsea. Like he got first 2 starts in a row the whole season, and then he performed obviously at Chelsea. And I think they purposefully put the drill in between Southampton and Chelsea. Obviously, we don't know when it was, but it was in between Southampton and Chelsea where his performance changed. And obviously, that was his section, and he was very good. But you wanted to speak about him as well, Karan.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms like the main thing I wanted to say with Eddie is the issue that he's had in the past is what he was viewed as like a poacher. You shouldn't be being the top scorer in the under 21s isn't a thing. Why are you in the under 21s for so long? Blah 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 blah. Why are you not playing? You don't have the attitude. Bielsa told him off. Like there's so many. I saw a ridiculous thread today about how Bielsa was mad at him. He's saying thinking that he was too big for Leeds, and he's a kid. He's growing up, and he's finally understanding what it means to be a top level footballer. I think he's grown a lot in terms of on the pitch. I think he's growing a lot off the pitch. The main thing I want to say about Eddie is he's the number 2 right now. Bit or nothing. This he's the number 2. But I look at him and I think, and I know a lot of people, if we hadn't had all or nothing, would be thinking, hang on a second, he's a number 2. He performed so well at the end of the season. Why is he number 2? Why didn't we get someone to back him up? He's not going to be happy? What if he leaves? And you look at what happened in All or Nothing, and you think, no, he's going to be fine. He'll compete. He's a competitor. He's a winner. He's someone that will go and put his
Well,
heart out
you know
and
what
do
I
that.
must say, Curran. Look, I'm gonna be critical here. He deserves more minutes. He does
So much,
deserve
man.
more minutes.
Yeah,
And
of course he does.
for example, very very quickly, like when you look at Palace, the subs came 10 to 15 minutes too late, and Mikel needs to be better at doing this. He just absolutely does. It's a con. It's something that he needs to improve on. And when you look at game state, I just find he needs to be more proactive, not just with injury management, by the way, which we got a little bit of insight to. And I do want to talk about Tierney a little bit later because there's been a lot of things that I think I've seen people about him not telling the medical staff and whatnot. And I just want to put some medical insight as to why a knee can cave on such an innocuous thing. It's not the shower, by the way. Like, you're making statements that just don't make sense. Like, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But just to kind of wrap up the Eddie thing, I think he's shown in this season still that he deserves more minutes, by the way. He was one of our top performers in preseason. He's been probably our most improved player in the last 18 months. It's not just he deserves it, his character now backs up the claims that he deserves it. So for me, you need to follow through on your non-negotiables, that if there's a player there showing you the attitude that you need every day in training to improve, and not only that, he performs. Like, it's not as though that you're just giving minutes to a guy that is nice and is doing the right things off the pitch. Like, he's performing. He changed the game versus Palace. For me, he deserved a little bit more of a cameo against, in our next game. It wasn't just, and he did that, by the way, late. He came back, and I think that him and Gabriel Jesus is a very interesting, dangerous dynamic. And I did say, when we looked at that, did you guys catch that training clip the other day in terms of his finish? I had a lot of
When he no
fights.
look, no look in the corner.
The no
The
look,
look, no look,
wrapping
yeah.
finish. Yeah, this is a guy, and I'm gonna go big here. This is a guy on the precipice of exploding. I don't know what we have in Eddie quite yet, but you're having a very complete profile. And given kind of the fluency and the understanding between both Gabbies, both Martinelli and Jesus, I do understand it's tough to see the space in the current moment, but Eddie is somebody that is exploding before our very eyes. You saw snippets of it in the documentary in terms of his approach, but that wrapping finish, for me, it spoke volumes. This is a guy whose confidence is sky high. He deserves more minutes, and at the very least, as a finisher sub, somebody that, I've said in the past, look, Mikel, you've got the 5 subs going right now, so you've got to make the most of it, right? Like, you have to use that. There's no for me, there's no excuse not to be proactive and protect your star players now. You've actually got the squad, you've got the quality, and you've actually got the rules that allow you to tactically sub people well. So for me, that was probably, something that I took away, that Eddie deserves more minutes. And, it's beyond just he's a good guy to have in the dressing room. Like,
Yeah,
he
I
deserves
agree though. I feel like, lastly on him, that they gave him a good edit. Obviously he gave himself a good edit, but like putting Ian Wright in between, saying I would never have waited till 22, 23 years old like Eddie did, with the patience and stuff like that, and putting in the Sambi stuff where he couldn't wait. Obviously Tavares was unhappy as well, so they just kept putting snippets in that fit the overall story well. And obviously he does deserve more, and he said it himself. Been here for years and finally got his chance. Others got their chance early, but not everyone's trajectory is the same. Like, not everyone's gonna come in at Saka at 18 and get 12 assists in all comps. But yeah, obviously that's enough on Eddie. And I do think, before we go into that Tierney, I want to talk about the other left back. Obviously going into West Ham, obviously Tierney got injured, but going into West Ham, he we did 1-1 at first half, obviously 1-0, and then 1-1 first half. But building into that, he kept mentioning that players who get their chance should play well and not mope. Arteta kept saying stuff like that. Like, you should take this example from Eddie, or you should take this example from Holding or El Neni, that even if you don't play well, don't be like angry and stuff like that. So half time comes 1-1, and he starts shouting at all the players. Then he goes into Nuno's face and starts shouting at him, saying, you were shit first half. You guys were shit first half. You were shit first half. And then obviously after the game, he kind of like reconciled him, picked him up, and I have to shout you. But
I didn't like that,
I said
Chris.
to you, I didn't like it when he started shouting in his face. Like, that was the wrong guy to pick, because you can shout. So Alex said it. So Alex Ferguson, even though I don't really like him, but he said, there's certain players I know can't take the shouting in the face. So I'd shout at the person next to him, but be talking
for him.
Yeah, be talking to and about him.
Well, he said it about Rio, remember? He said it. or he would shout at Rooney or Rio because
or
he was
Evra,
talking about
because he
Nani.
knows
He
these
was
guys.
talking about Nani, right? And
Yeah,
just to like further back that point, it's a perfect quote because I think he said this before. I would shout at Rio or I would shout at Rooney to pick up the pace and stop being lazy. Not that they were lazy, but because he was talking about Nani. And that's just a perfect man management idea that I think, look, Mikel still needs to do. And I agree with you. It was the wrong thing to do. And in fact, remember when we were watching and we were like, I don't know why things changed with him and Nuno. If he was the one to recommend that we need to focus on Nuno because he's too quiet,
yeah.
he recognized the instant in terms of understanding that Nuno is somebody that plagues on mistakes. He's somebody that is mentally down in the dumps. But why do you focus on him? And look, I'll tell you as a coach, I'll be honest with you, the person that you're most angry at is the person you love the most. Okay. And what I mean by that, it's because somebody that you love and you're so frustrated why they can't reach their potential. And you focus on that. But part of it in terms of being a coach is understanding the moment when to criticize, when not to criticize. And so the biggest thing is, look, he is learning. I agree, with Yo Yo in terms of he's learning on the job. It's cool. But the one thing I will say is I need to criticize these things when we really do balance it with quite a bit of positives. So for me, it's just if you're going to recognize the fact that Nuno needed time, yay, like amazing. Like I'm glad you were the one to bring it up. But then don't go back on your logic 4 months later and then pick him out for performances where in reality, if you guys remember, he wasn't the worst one on the pitch. He wasn't good.
Definitely wasn't.
He deserved criticism, but there was about 4 other players that deserved criticism far more than Nuno. And if you know that somebody is mentally weak, picking them up and kind of forcing them to smile is not going to change their mindset. So, but you know what, mate? Like I think it actually backs up the decision to send him on loan. I'll be honest with you because Mikel is at this point somebody that I think is still learning youth management for people he likes and he doesn't like, and he's still trying to balance. And in fact, I think this is one through line that I'll just say in All or Nothing in general. Edu and Steve Round make note of the fact that he's learning on the job. In far earlier episodes, he kind of makes sense where I'm glad Mikel is kind of learning to become a little bit more man management oriented, or at least recognizing the person, because tactically he's top, but there's an improvement around how he's interacting with people, right? I actually think that he's still learning that aspect. We kind of knew that, but it was just nice to see at least there was moments of recognizing Mikel needs work in some of these areas. So,
but the thing is that with Mikel is that we've said it not just obviously, but mainly tactically, that he's very aware of what he needs to do in a situation, but
of course,
doesn't do what he needs to do, even though he's aware of it's the same thing the team
yeah.
did. The team is very aware of what they needed to do, what they did wrong, but they'll continue to do the same thing, and he does it the same thing, obviously in a different way, but he does the exact same thing as the team where he knows exactly what needs to be done. He's done it before, like he treated different players differently based on who they are and based on how they react, but with Nuno, he didn't treat him the same. But before we get into like Tierney and the overall of the series, but what did you make of Nuno and how he was treated by Arteta, Karen?
Give me a minute. I'm kind of going a bit
Oh,
all over the place, so I'm going to
Yeah.
come
no
back in.
problem.
Just give me a
We'll
Yeah,
second.
come back. You know what? I kind of wanted to talk medically about Kieran Tierney here.
well,
Because,
obviously, obviously certain people said they haven't watched it, but so Kieran goes, or they had a meeting after Palace
Mhm.
because Partey was injured. They had a meeting after Palace, and they said, yeah, Partey is a media or whatever. He's pretty much done to the end of the season. Then they asked about Ben White. He'll be back later in the season, but he's injured as well. And then Kieran, they said he played. He knew he was injured from Wolves. Played the next 5 games. Even went to Scotland on the injury, knowing that he was feeling something, and then injures himself coming out the shower versus West Ham. Obviously, for me, I said straight to you, like, why are you gonna play 5 games for the Arsenal in a row, injured, knowing you're injured, and then go to Scotland as well, knowing you're injured?
I'm
And
less
obviously,
mad. I'm less mad about the fact that he played through injury because I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of players that play through
but I
injuries.
said, I said it to someone in replies and obviously Twitter, that a player like him that's been injured so many times is very aware of
Yeah.
what's going to stop him from playing and what's going to continue. Like before the doctors even said it to him, he said to the players, "I'm done for the
Yeah.
rest of the season. I'm done." So he's very aware of what's gonna stop his body and what's gonna let him play through. But yeah, it was obviously detrimental that he did play those 7 games.
So what it is, okay, is when you receive a hyperextension. So just very quickly, when you do receive that, it immediately makes the joint quite weak, but it doesn't stop you from tearing, by the way. That's not what happens in terms of a joint and the structure of it. All it does, and by the way, if you did have a hyperextension, they would have just told him you need to take 3 weeks off, and we're just going to keep testing it to make sure that you can do it. But by the way, he passed the test because everybody does a daily fitness test in order to receive training, but also just to go inside. So for me, it's a very big gray zone as a physio or as sports medicine doctor. When you have a look at it, the kind of the recommendations for a hyperextension are going to be rest if you can. Now, logically, these guys are athletes and they're going to be forced to want to play. So there's going to come a decision where they're not perfect. They're not. It's not going to happen. Now, am I then condoning him to go to Scotland? No, that was unneeded. Those are things that he should have stayed here. He should have rehabbed. Will that prevent him from snapping his knee later? No. Like the risk is still there that he could have done it later on. It had nothing to do with that. It was the fact that the joint was just too weak and it couldn't handle load. And at the business end of the season, by the way, after having Thomas Partey out, after having Ben White out, who, by the way, they were feeling these things beforehand.
They were injured as well, and he trained, and they said to him, "No,
Yeah.
get out. You're not fit. You can't play."
Well, exactly, and we saw it with Holding, like out of nowhere, where we didn't know, who wasn't fit, by the way, picked up an injury mid-game, and they were like, "Okay, how's it feeling, Rob? He's not comfortable. Get out." But at the same token, guys, you don't think that they were watching Kieran Tierney to see in training if he was not okay? It happens. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Like medical stuff is not black and white. It's not simple as what a lot of people will have you believe. One thing I will say, he needs to be better about policing his own body in terms of where he can or he can't go, because it's not the fact that you're injured, it's being proactive. It's being proactive about injury management that I think stems down a little bit from Mikel, whose philosophy is it doesn't matter who you play through it. And he's the type of person that, by the way, that has done that his entire career. Celtic made him play on a hernia injury. Celtic made him play, through major surgery where he delayed getting surgery on his pubis bone.
But he said it, though. He said it at the start, and he said it in interviews. Arteta's even said it that sometimes we have to make the players get out of their own way.
Yes.
Like, they themselves won't stop. Like Rashford was playing on a shoulder injury from COVID till last summer till he finally went to have surgery on it. Like, these players are going to continue to play through these injuries, and if the coach won't stop them, they're not going to stop them themselves until they can't do it. So I think obviously it's poor that he didn't say I'm done, but the coaches should have pulled him out and say no, you can't play anymore. The same thing they did with Holding. I think if he's not going to stop, and we know from evidence that for the past 6 years of his pro career, he will never stop if he's injured. Like, he's not going to stop. So the coaches have to know that if he's not going to do it, we have to be good for him rather than him do it himself. But what did you make of? Obviously, you didn't speak on Tavares, Karen, but Tavares and Tierney.
Yeah. So with Tavares, I think I'm pretty sure you two must have said it. The way that he kind of tried to motivate him was a bit. I didn't really get it. Like, I think he was trying to get in his face and try and G him up. I think he was trying to think, this guy's young. He's going to reflect. He's going to try and he'll bounce back from it. He'll have something about him and try and make him the center of attention and try and get him more integrated with the group, and the guys will pick him up. But it just didn't feel like he got. I don't think he gets Nuno yet. I think Nuno is someone that I don't think any of us realized how shy and a bit introverted he is. He doesn't really, he's not got the confidence to be in a team with Kieran and now Zinchenko, and think, because these guys love those two guys, and he's still got that mindset from earlier in the season of like, I don't know, I can do this, but I don't know if I'm that guy. I don't know. And I think Mikel's noticed that and tried to like make him the center. But yeah, I mean, Blaze, I'll tell you this right now. I think he does. I think he does need to be better in this situation. I think he's a senior pro now. He's not. He's not a Nuno. He's not. An Eddie. He's a fully grown man. He's had these injuries in the past, and he needs to be able to say, "Look, I can't do this again." I think this should have been, hopefully, a massive wake up, because he missed. No one will be hurting more. No one will be hurting.
Months. Yeah.
no one will be hurting more than him. The last 2 seasons, in key moments, he's missed. And I think if this doesn't set in for him now, he needs to really take a look and be like, look, I need to get it. I think this season with Zinchenko as well, having that ability to come in, and he doesn't have to play every game. He doesn't have to do everything, and he can focus on just being the best Kieran Tierney.
Well, one thing, Curran,
So-
one thing that I'll say, sorry, because it builds off a point that you're making here. It's absolutely something that Kieran has to take ownership of. He's not
Yeah.
to blame. He is to blame for some of this, especially going to Scotland. But one thing that I'll say is that Mikel now has the squad to be proactive. And what we saw versus Palace, it annoys me, guys, because you basically got Zinchenko, who again is tiring. This is a case of, again, you're seeing a player go into the red zone, he's losing his battle, and you're delaying the sub. This is what I mean about being proactive in terms of injury management, but as well as game state. So for me, the biggest thing is that what you've got to do is you've got to recognize that these are, I call them stallions, okay? Sometimes you've got to cage them. They're going to want to go, okay? You've got to have the experience to basically know when to push them, when not to push them, and be proactive in your management of these players, because to date, we haven't seen it too much, and it did annoy me at the start of the season. We've had similar things happen, essentially. You've got Zinchenko and Gabby Jesus who are tiring. You don't do the subs till 10 to 15 minutes later, and it's like 80 minutes when in reality they needed it 10, 15 minutes ago at the 60th minute mark. So, look, I hope we have the squad now. Look, Zinchenko's there. Saliba's at the back. We've got a much better depth. He's got to use it. He's just simply got to use it.
100%.
Yeah, I think he just needs to step in. Same thing on the injuries, just step in, because they're not going to do it themselves. They're not going to be like, oh, Arteta, take me off. So you have to be the one to make the decisions.
Yeah.
And obviously, the last two things I want to talk about, obviously Spurs and obviously Everton, we beat them 5-1, and Leeds were pretty much routine wins.
Everton was
Spurs-
basically just
I wanna
like
speak about
a closing
Newcastle.
credits.
Newcastle,
There's not much to
and
say.
then
Yeah.
Newcastle, and then your overall thoughts, like what do you rate out of 10? Obviously, Newcastle, we go into this game, they're big enough to be like, when you get top four, lose, you get fifth. And yeah, we lost. Obviously, we know we lost. We know the players were angry at halftime. We know Saka was kicking bottles. Xhaka was throwing bottles. Arteta said at the end of the Newcastle that, again, I'll take the blame, put it all on my chest. They'll never go. I'll never let the blame go to you. But you guys were shit today.
It's tough to
like
defend
Just
you.
shut up.
Yeah, but what did you make of obviously Newcastle and the things we didn't see because we saw the loss? What the things we didn't see?
I'm gonna do final thoughts, and then you, George, you can do yours as well. I mean, on Newcastle itself, the main things that stood out was Xhaka, his team in at half time being like, "Look, you want to be a Champions League club. This is not Champions League football. You were playing like a Division 2 team right now." The duels again and again, we hear Mikel talk about his duels being intense, making sure that you block off space, making sure that you press high. I mean, it's just it was the same criteria, the same issues again and again. I don't want to to our own torn too much, but we have been saying we do not accept this. I mean, personally, as fans, I feel like these are things that are massive problems. You can't drop your intensity for 30 minutes. It doesn't work. Football doesn't work like that. And obviously, the main thing again, and the main thing with Newcastle was, I think you saw a manager who you could see he put everything into it. You could see at the end of it, you could see that like literally the life drained out of his face. Everything. I think he was like all of us. I mean, you guys know, I took me about 2 weeks to recover from that loss. I had a
Oh god.
oh god, I was terrible after Newcastle. So look, it felt like he died. It part.
He lagged out, right?
He lagged out.
Felt
Yeah,
like
no, here.
No, for fuck's sake, come on. There we go. Sorry guys. The last thing in terms of what was good and what was bad. What was good was how Mikel got his we understand Mikel a lot more in terms of the principles that he wants to get across. in terms of the issues that he finds with his team and the issues that I think he's improved with at the beginning of the season. Let's hope it continues. I think the interactions, I think Ramsdale, I think for me, and Xhaka, massive. I think in terms of just being able to see their personalities, I think Odegaard was. We didn't see any of Odegaard. I don't really. There's nothing to talk about with him. He didn't really make an appearance, and we get. I know George is more, but I get the same thing. I really feel like there's something there. He's not a born leader. And I feel like people always call for Xhaka to leave, but if Xhaka left, the gap in the leadership that we'd have at this club, I think, is so evident now. It's massive. Good for Eddie and Josh. I think we heard a lot of Josh. Tim Lewis as well. I think we heard a lot more of Tim Lewis because I know us three especially feel that we didn't really we know what Richard Garlick is. We know what Vinay is. I feel like Tim Lewis was a bit of an unknown. For me personally, anyway, I don't know about the YouTube, but for me anyway, I feel like we got to know that he's more of like a liaison to Mikel.
He's an
and
advisor.
The guys.
That's what
he's an advisor, yeah. But like I
He's
feel
the
like
eyes and ears.
what's your before you go, George? What's your out of 10 rating, Karen?
I'd say about an 8. And the only reason why is the things we didn't see. I didn't see any of the January transfer window. I would have loved to see more on, for example, a Vlahovic or a Schlotterbeck or something like this, some kind of trying to get someone in. I feel like there was a lot of, there wasn't enough kind of tactical stuff. Like with Pep's ones, you see a lot of tactical analysis and kind of how he wants his teams to. I feel like there was a lot more interpersonal relationships and the community kind of thing. And that's fine. And I think that's a positive as well. But I feel like that it's, for me, the main thing is, and also the whole, I feel like the whole North London Forever thing came out as it wasn't as organic as I thought it would come out as. I thought it was very sort of like.
To be fair, I think it's way better.
I'll say my
better now. It's way better now. I'll be honest. And even in the documentary, they kind of make note. And even we knew, by the way, because they added speakers at the end, but it doesn't show you kind of towards the end where that song popped on. It was definitely a lot better than what the documentary said.
Yeah, I'll say my thoughts before George does it and then ends it. I do think it was a good documentary. I really wish we could have seen like more of Per. We saw him once, the whole thing. We saw him at the table of their weekly meeting, and we saw him once. Obviously, the injury stuff, I think the elbow stuff was good. I think we saw a lot of Mikel, and I think the reason why they didn't show the tactics is because they want a bigger emotional attachment from fans to the team. And City, there's less emotion because they just win the league when they do the documentary. So it was never going to be so similar. And obviously, Spurs was about Jose because otherwise they wouldn't have brought a lot of people to watch. But yeah, I do think it brings the team closer and it shows the light on why Odegaard became captain, which for me is because they want him to take more responsibility and onus and force him to do it rather than him already having the like leadership in the change room. I think they just want him to take more responsibility, and so far he hasn't done so on the ball. But yeah, I do agree on the 8 out of 10 rating. There could have been more on they shown, but it did well because obviously it showed the season was an emotional roller coaster. We saw ups and downs, and we just, like we said last video, the team are so young, and they're so much younger than, and we'll never sing that song, and was so much younger than we thought. Like what's it called? Saka's so young, Smith Rowe is so young. Eddie's probably the only one who's like really talking. Obviously, that's because he's from South
How
London.
about this? How about the loser?
Yeah,
the loser of the predictions. Get in the
I'm
comments.
not saying
The loser of the
will not.
predictions of the end of the season has to sing at the on the end of season review.
I think that's a great idea. There's nothing wrong
I
with
feel
that.
I feel sorry for you, George, but you're gonna have to do that. I'm not.
No, brother,
I'm not
you're doing
losing.
it. I'm
I'm
sorry.
not
You know what?
losing.
If you just
Yeah,
don't lose,
8 out
just
of 10
don't
for
lose.
me. But yeah, George, go on. What's your
No, look,
overall thoughts?
overall, look, I'm not as high as the other guys. I'll be honest with you. I felt like the sentimentality of the entire documentary for me, I was looking for something a little bit more
I
tactical.
expected it.
I didn't expect it because of what we've gotten with City and we got with Spurs, which I felt were, in terms of vibes, offered a little bit more in-camp stuff. I think for the most part, what we saw was very general things. And when you talked about, the players' appreciation for Mikel's tactics, it was very rare that we got training ground exercises on the pitch. We really only got the Eddie one. And I think when I'm looking back at the Spurs as well as, the City documentaries, there was a lot more on the pitch training session insight than what we got. Now, that's probably by choice. That's probably by the club's choice. But for that, I'm annoyed because that was something that, I was looking to get. In terms of kind of the positives overall, really quickly, Carlos Cuesta was my favorite. He was my coaching MVP. I've been saying it all the time during these reactions. I think Aaron Ramsdale is my captain. If you guys had saw the first 3 episodes, I must have yelled that at least 20 times. And everybody was my kid at the end of it. But look, guys, you got to love the idea of what we did. But ultimately, the biggest thing for me was I felt as though we crushed some myths about Mikel and the line. That was a big thing for me. Mikel wants to be pressy. He wants to be front-footed. He wants to meet you in your face, win the duel. I think ultimately that's something that we didn't see perpetrated on the timeline. Everyone kept saying, is it a Mikel instruction to sit back? No, it absolutely is not. I agree. It's a young team. I keep saying it. It shocked me how young this team is. The lack of actual leaders and the reaction to adversity was just so quiet. Like, it was very defeatist. So I think ultimately for me, it's a really good idea that we get bigger personalities. And I think, the Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus, if we were to do an all or nothing, would just be excellent. But, look, ultimately for me, I felt it was probably a 6 out of 10. I really liked a lot of what I saw. I just didn't get a lot of what I needed. Explanations a little bit more in terms of the January transfer window were massive. I didn't even get a summer transfer window. Like, I didn't get the process as much as I wanted to. I didn't get the loans at the very least. Like, when I look at Per Mertesacker and his cameos, at least where was Ben Napier? There was no little explanation about that entire department, which, by the way, has been a huge part of our club of recently. And then when you go into it, I just felt as though the explanations for why certain things didn't happen weren't as great. I think that they really leaned into the cute aspect of Bukayo Saka a little bit. But ultimately, what I did love is you could tell a lot of some of the human elements with the families in terms of Mikel Arteta's wife, Shaka's family. It did give you a little bit more of a human aspect to what these players are going through, especially Nuno in terms of his tough time. But yeah, ultimately, I was just looking for a little bit more tactics than I do get because that's just my mind. But it was a really good watch. And look, any content with the boys is something that you're going to approve of. But yeah, Carlos Costa is my coaching MVP, and I think Aaron Ramsdale is probably my MVP in a leadership group.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously, it was only 8 episodes, and I do think, cool. Personally, I just expected it to be like this because they want more fans on the side of the team, and I think they probably got that. And yeah, I think people are excited for next season. Obviously, starting 2-2 is good, but I think we'll talk more about that next time in a transfer video. Tomorrow we'll be back for a Bournemouth review, then transfers. But yeah, George, you can do your thing since I
Yeah, and then really quickly to answer, we're going to have a transfer pod next week, so don't worry. Everybody that's asking transfer, we will address it. Don't worry, we're not ignoring you. We see you, and we will be doing it next week, kind of in a little transfer pod. But guys, yeah, to do our thing, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. You hit that bell for notifications to know when we do in fact upload. You find me at GeorgeV_AFC. Find Chris at CK Football. That's at CKFTBL. And of course, Curran, you can find him at Curran BOP. In terms of the Twitter, guys, follow at BOP Footy. And you can find us, of course, Ball Over Passion here on YouTube. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the interaction. We love it. And, we're really impressed by everybody interacting with us. So make sure that you guys keep commenting. Let us know your thoughts out of on the documentary in the comments below, and let us know what you guys think in terms of what it means for us going forward. Maybe, what kind of insights did you guys gather? Were they the same as ours? Let us know. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you guys tomorrow, absolutely, for a preview on Bournemouth and Scotty Parker. So cheers, boys. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Peace.